India Clean Air Summit, or ICAS as it's known for short, has grown from strength to strength over the past 6 years, bringing together people from diverse walks of life. These could be policymakers, academicians, public citizen groups, researchers, and the larger community at all. The theme for this year highlights this very core fundamental of why India Clean Air Summit was first conceived and how significant it is to imagine a participatory future for air quality governance, both globally and nationally. It is necessary and of utmost significance that if we need any success in combating air pollution, we need to include all. With much further ado, I will start the session for today. Before I start, I'll just highlight some logistical details. You can access the agenda by scanning the QR code on the back of your badges. It also has the Submit Companion, which focuses on the work CSTEP has been doing and other studies that we have conducted in the air quality sector. So you can have a look at that. With this, we start with the first session. The first session is going to speak about South-South and North collaboration towards clean air, thus bridging the gap between the North and the global South countries, and exploring opportunities for collaboration and cooperation for air pollution governance. For this session, we have with us Professor Daniel Westervelt, who will be chairing the session, Professor Faye McNeil, who is Professor and Vice Chair at Department of Chemical Engineering at Columbia University, Dr. R. Subramaniam, who is the head for the air quality sector at CSTEP, and Dr. Alison Hughes, who is a senior lecturer at the University of Ghana. I welcome you all for this session. Dr. Daniel M. Westervelt is a senior associate professor at the Lemore Dorothy Earth Observatory. He's also been a faculty member at Columbia University Data Science Institute and was an affiliate scientist with NASA Goddard Institute for Space Studies. He is also in Columbia University Climate and Life Fellow. I welcome you, sir, and I would like you to take over the mic and introduce the rest of the speakers.
Should I stand on this? Okay. All right, good morning, everybody. Yeah, I'll get this mic closer a little bit. There we go. All right, good morning. So I will be the moderator today, and I'm also going to give a few opening remarks about what is CAMS-Net. I think maybe for the best way to do this would be I'll introduce the speakers as they come up to speak. And so I think for now we can maybe just go to the slides for. Yeah, so I thought I would start off here by just saying a little bit about what is CAMS-Net. I know we have some new folks that maybe aren't as familiar with it, and of course we have a lot of people in the room that do know what CAMS-Net is, and so this may be a bit of review for you. But yeah, the theme of this talk is going to be South-South-North collaboration, which I think is exemplified in what we're doing here this week and in this audience, as we have attendees from, of course, from India, and also a number of attendees from several different African countries. And then, of course, we have some US folks as well. So yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about CAMS-Net and some of our international collaboration and how that's led to some of the research findings. And then throughout the day and probably throughout this session as well, you'll hear some of the projects that CAMS-Net is involved in and helped start. All right, so CAMS-Net in a nutshell is basically a global international network of networks for getting useful, actionable data out of air quality sensors. All right, so it stands for the Clean Air Monitoring Solutions Network, and it's basically just a big international network that provides a forum for spurring new collaborations, spurring new research ideas, exchanging knowledge, exchanging ideas, exchanging data, and bringing together a diverse cast of actors in this air quality and sensor space. So this includes the physical scientists, the decision makers or the policy makers, citizen groups, private sector, government, non-government as well. So really bringing together a big cast. And for kind of who is CAMS-Net? So I'm the principal investigator of CAMS-Net. We also have Dr. Albert Presto in the room, who is the PI for the Carnegie Mellon University. We have also Professor Faye McNeil, who you're going to hear from later, who is a co-PI at Columbia for the CAMS-Net, and then a cast of supporters and participants as well that you'll be hearing from throughout today. So that's our website there. It's just camsnet.org if you want to learn some more. Admittedly, the website's a little bit out of date. I probably should work on updating that. But I will tell you that if you would like to get involved or get on the mailing list, you can go to that website and there's a contact email. You can go to that, get that contact email and send an email and just say you'd like to join the mailing list, and then you can get on the mailing list. And in the mailing list, we sort of share air quality, like funding opportunities, job opportunities, announcements, conferences, yeah, just kind of stuff like that. So hopefully it will be helpful to you and not a burden to your probably overburdened inboxes at this point. So that's CAMS-Net. Yeah, we're a group of maybe 50 or so different partner networks, somewhere around 150 to 200 members. We work all over the world, really. We have a pretty strong emphasis in the global south. We've spent a lot of our effort working in several different countries in sub-Saharan Africa. And we're also kind of trying to encourage more activities in India, which is part of the reason why we're here today. One of the big things that we do is hold conferences, hold meetings, like the one that we're at right now. And I just wanted to highlight a few of our past successes. We had we were part of the Air Sensors International Conference in 2022 and very recently in 2024, where CAMS-Net had side meetings and also hosted sessions within the Air Sensors International Conference. We had, really great attendees at these oral sessions. We had sort of a private, not really private, but sort of a side meeting as well, where a lot of our attendees were able to come and learn about our project. We've also done a lot of things like training and summer schools and things like that. And so this was an example of the first African School on Atmospheric Sciences, which happened in Morocco in 2022. I think there's a few people in this room here that are probably in this picture and were at that event. And that was a really great success. And then last year, we had the CAMS-Net and AfricAir joint meeting in Kigali, Rwanda. Here's some pictures from that. So this was organized mostly by Dr. Albert Presto, Dr. Mike Giordano, who's here as well, and Subu, who kind of together, they all have sort of the Rwanda affiliation there. And so they were able to host this at CMU Africa and KCRC in Kigali, Rwanda. So we had kind of a 4-day meeting with training and presentations, and it was a really good time. And I think also some people that were at that meeting are probably here also today, which is great. And then of course, here in Bangalore, we have this with a joint meeting with ICAS, and we're really grateful to be part of this joint meeting and to be able to share some of our experiences with everybody. So CAMS-Net is really big into building professional capacity. So not just research, not just science, but also just building up people and giving them the skills necessary to work on air sensors, to work on air quality. And so some of the stuff, if you were here yesterday, you probably saw some great presentations from Garima and from Samya and Albert and all kinds of people. Sorry that I didn't name everybody, but that's kind of what we're about. And so we've done some things here, like, for example, we have this tutorial for using a multiple linear regression model to correct data from low-cost sensors. So basically where you have the co-location study that I think everybody's familiar with. We have sort of a tutorial that will walk you through how to code that up and how to sort of get all the right parameters and whatnot. And so we have that available. If you're interested, you can email us or just talk to us. We also have a version that is code-free, so to say. So it doesn't require like any code. It's just basically a web application where you can just upload your data, and then it'll spit out sort of your correction factors for your low-cost sensors and also your evaluation metrics. And these are just some of the pictures over the years of some of the capacity building events. Yeah, we've had some really great attendees and participants, and you can see some of these pictures here. We've also been working to try to understand and evaluate our project and figure out what is effective and what isn't. And so surveys are a key tool in doing that. We took a survey at the beginning of the project to see how many of our partner networks had either known each other or collaborated with each other, or how familiar they are with each other. And our goal was to sort of change that from, I've never heard of this group, to I work with this group, I collaborate with this group, I know this group, to sort of really bridge this gap. And so we have, again, with the theme of South-South collaboration, in this partner network, we have groups in India, we have groups in different countries in sub-Saharan Africa, and then we have also a bunch of US groups as well. So trying to really encourage collaborations across these domains. We've also been able to send a few pilot projects some funding. Those are the list of the projects there. These were emphasized on forming new collaborations, but the theme of the projects had to be about using air quality sensors. And so I think we might even hear a little bit this week about some of these projects as we go. So I think with that, in the interest of time, I'll just kind of leave up my take-home points here, and we will get on to the rest of this session. Thank you very much. And I guess questions we'll probably hold for the end. Is that good? Yeah, so we'll hold questions for the end. And I'm now going to put on my moderator hat and go back to moderating. So our next speaker is going to be Professor Faye McNeil, who's from Columbia University. She's from the Department of Chemical Engineering and also the Department of Earth and Environmental Sciences at Columbia. She's also the principal investigator of the Columbia Clean Air Toolbox project, which I think you'll hear some about. She is the president of the American Association of Aerosol Research, which is a really big deal, and it's a really great achievement. And yeah, she's got a whole bevy of awards that I could go on for a while, but I think in the interest of time, I'm going to pass it over to Professor Faye to give her remarks. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dan, for that really kind introduction and introducing us all to CAMS-Net. So welcome, everyone. I'm very thrilled to be here with all of you back in Bangalore. Really excited for the programming and the discussions we'll have this week. So thank you so much for joining us. So the reason why we're all here, of course, is that air pollution is a threat to public health across the world, and it's shortening human life in most locations, but especially in many of the most populated parts of the world, including in Africa and Asia. In India, even in Karnataka, which is relatively clean, where we are here, air pollution is known to shorten human life. Here in Karnataka, the average life expectancy is shortened by 2 years due to exposure to air pollution. In North India, of course, the problem is more severe. Accompanying this issue is the fact that in many of the places in the world that are most affected by this problem, there's a lack of data on the ground to help us quantify the problem. And data are really needed at each step on the path towards getting cleaner air in order for progress to continue. And a lack of data can hamper progress at many different stages. So, we need air pollution data on the ground to identify that there's a problem in the first place, to support a cost-benefit analysis of, establishing the need for action and building the case for change. Then, I would say the stage that many cities in India are at currently is that it's known that there's an issue. There's a desire to take action, but there's a need to prioritize, which sources will we tackle for reducing emissions, et cetera, and data are needed to prioritize those kinds of actions. And then, of course, after interventions are made, we need data to be able to evaluate were they successful or not. So data are needed at each one of these stages. And this is a big part of what CAMS-Net is about, is supporting the generation of this sort of data. Of course, besides these roles that data can play, data also tells a story. Okay, so these plots are from a project that was recently launched called Air Quality Stripes. You can check it out online. And what they've done is kind of inspired by the climate stripes you may have seen. So they've used a climate model along with satellite data going back to early industrial times, and they're showing how air pollution has evolved in cities around the world. And so you can see for London and Beijing, the increase in air pollution as industrialization took hold, and then after the introduction of legislation and policy action, the air pollution subsiding to more tolerable levels. Of course, we're still writing the next chapters of India's air quality story, right? So this is the current stripes for Delhi, and we haven't quite turned the corner yet. Although I would say that when it comes to data collection, India is doing quite well. So this figure I'm showing is from a study that a colleague and I did, taking the first batch of PM 2.5 monitoring data from CPCB that was available in 2016, 2017. This is when that monitoring first started being widespread. And the data were only available for a few cities, but it already was enough to show that air quality is really a national crisis in India. This isn't just a problem in Delhi. It's not just a problem in the major cities, but it's a concern all around. And I think an interesting thing is when we revisited this data about 3 years later, this was a project that Sandhya Sathuraman worked on when she was a high school student, actually, with me. There was just a lot more data to look at, right? It's a simple story, but a very powerful one, that India is doing a great job of rolling out government-based monitoring, at least in major cities, okay? And this is totally necessary. Of course, it's a huge country. The coverage is not quite getting to all the rural areas. Some states have less than others. And there's, as is normally the case, not necessarily enough data to identify sources in a hyperlocal manner. And so this is where low-cost sensing comes in, right? So this is part of the motivation for CAMS-Net, is that low-cost sensors provide the opportunity to expand the coverage area of a monitoring network that might be already established by government bodies. Because of their relatively low cost, you can have a higher spatial density of sensors and therefore get very hyperlocal neighborhood level information, which might identify hotspots and sources and guide pollution reduction actions. It simplifies understanding the difference between indoor and outdoor exposure. We'll hear a bit about that tomorrow. And then, of course, it's easier to roll these kinds of projects out in areas which might not be ready for the kind of investment that's needed for a large government network. Of course, there's one major caveat, right, which is sometimes you get what you pay for when it comes to low-cost sensors, right? Some of them have been shown to perform excellently once they're calibrated, but their performance is sensitive to temperature, relative humidity, the amount of pollution, particularly if the particle loading is on the higher side. Sensor performance can change, and then the optical properties, because of the way these things operate, can also influence the performance. This is all addressable with careful design of the sensor network and in-field calibration of the network, but this is absolutely essential. Okay, an example of a calibration strategy that one might use, which is one that I have used in my research, A central element of this is co-location, so designing your network in such a way that some of the sensors are in the same location as a trusted reference grade monitor. And then as you collect data throughout the project, the comparison can be made at the end. How well did our sensors perform? Calibrations can be developed. And if you're lucky and you have multiple co-locations, you can even check, was this method sound? Okay. Dan mentioned the Clean Air Toolbox for Cities project that he and I have at Columbia. It's just been a great pleasure to be part of since 2019, with Dan leading the work that we do in Africa and our other colleagues who are from all across Columbia University. We have 2 activities in India, which are centered around low-cost sensor work, including in West Bengal. This would be our longest-lasting collaboration. We're really grateful to have the West Bengal Pollution Control Board chairman and chief scientist here with us this week. We've been having discussions for quite some time about, how can we collect data to supplement the work that's already being done there, help identify sources, and ensure that it's trustworthy. And we've also recently started some collaborations in Tamil Nadu as well. I've mentioned, just a few of our partners and the Columbia part of the Clean Air Toolbox, but the strength of what we do is really with all of the local partners that we have. So we have quite a few across India and Africa, and some global partners as well. And we're really pleased that many of you are here with us today. Okay. I don't want to take too much time, and I also don't want to give away the secrets of Sandhya's poster, which will be this evening. It's just outside the door. But this is an example of our published work from our work in West Bengal, which was a collaboration with a startup company there that had deployed a Clarity network, and which had 3 co-locations with CPCB and WPCB reference grade monitors. And so we were able to validate the in-field calibration for this network and then infer some spatial and temporal trends using that network, which really gave some interesting insights into the major sources of PM 2.5 in Kolkata, which I think are changing the way that people think about the main sources of pollution in Kolkata. So you can see Sandhya's poster for the rest of the details there. Okay, so with that, thank you, and I'm looking forward to spending the rest of the week with you.
Thank you very much, Faye. Please keep your questions ready. Everybody has pencils and paper at your table, so go ahead and jot down your questions. We'll come back to that. I can neither confirm nor deny whether there will be a pop quiz at the end of this, so be ready. All right, so we'll move on to our next speaker here, which is Dr. R. Subramanian. A funny thing about introducing Subu is he has bounced around at a lot of places, and so it could take a long time to get through all of his affiliations. So maybe you could stay at one place for a while. I was just kidding. But yeah, so I think probably everybody knows Subu. Just to give him a brief introduction, he did his PhD at Carnegie Mellon in mechanical engineering. He has had stints in a lot of different organizations, kind of maybe starting most recently. He was part of the Make Our Planet Great Again initiative, which was a French government initiative to support researchers doing climate-related science. And he was selected as one of the fellows for that, which was a really great honor. And a lot of that work led to kind of this formation of a lot of this Africair and Africa-based research, which CAMS-Net has also been involved in. After that, he was a senior scientist at Query in Qatar, where he worked on air quality in the desert there. He's also been a a research fellow at the Kigali Collaborative Research Center, which is in Kigali, and I believe he maintains that affiliation. And of course, today he's the sector head of air quality for here at CSTEP. So without further ado, Subu will give his remarks.
All right, great. Thank you for the very kind introduction, Dan, and welcome again to all of you. As Dan and Faye pointed out, the CAMS-Net meeting this year is in partnership with the India Clean Air Summit, and this is the 6th edition of the India Clean Air Summit. We have been hosting these meetings since 2019, and generally we see about 200 to 200 odd attendees, about evenly divided between government, academia, and think tanks. And of course, the air quality was a group at CSTEP. Till last year, it was a group of about 15 people. And at that point, it was growing too big to be a single group within a sector. It was earlier within the climate, environment, and sustainability sector. And last year, it was spun out into its own sector, and I was hired to hire it. So I've been at CSTEP for about a year. So a little bit about us. We are the Institute of Repute. So if you're familiar with the National Clean Air Program, a lot of academia and think tanks are tasked with assisting local pollution control boards, manage their air quality, and work within NCAP. And so we are tasked with assisting the 4 non-attainment cities, Bengaluru, Davangere, Hubli, Dharwad, and Kalaburagi, on working towards NCAP attainment. And from last year, we had a staff of 15, and now we are over 20, including 8 PhDs, several of whom were hired over the last year. And our vision really is to enhance air quality management in India by developing modeling, observational, and policy tools that can be used to formulate new policies and track the implementation of new and existing policies. And also, critically, to share these tools with the other think tanks and government bodies so that we can collectively work towards clean air for all. We don't see ourselves, the ecosystem in India has like multiple players, various civil service organizations, academics, government officials, of course, folks like the West Bengal Pollution Control Board. We are very grateful that you could join us today. And essentially, we all work together towards clean air for all. We are not competing with other think tanks. So basically, we all have our roles to play in the ecosystem. And so our goal is really, when we develop these tools and techniques, we are freely sharing them with everybody else. So a little bit about how the work at CSTEP and how the work that we do will be showcased at ICAS actually partners with CAMS-Net, which focuses on the use of sensors towards air quality management. So number one, the most direct connection really is air sensor evaluations. And Faye talked about making sure that we actually evaluate the performance of sensors. And one of the projects that we worked on, so basically Alison Hughes, who's our next panelist, as well as Dan, led a sensor intercomparison in Accra, Ghana. And based on that, we actually leveraged that into the AfriSet project, which Alison might talk about, and Mike also will talk about in the next session, which is the West Africa Sensor Evaluation and Training Facility. I might have mangled that name up, but that's going really well. And so when I moved to India, I basically copied AfriSet and said, we'll do INDISET, which is the India Sensor Evaluation and Training Facility. And so you'll see presentations by Emil Varghese, Nirav Lekinwala, and a poster by Nidhi Malik today, so make sure to check that out. So part of our work includes, for example, developing emission inventories. And so we have developed an emission inventory for Bengaluru, and this is work led by Anirban Banerjee and Pratima Singh. And so what we found, for example, is that 63% of the PM2.5 emissions in Bengaluru are from transportation. And various other industries, various other sectors contribute as well. And as part of that work, we have recently launched a portal where we've developed emission inventories for 76 non-attainment and million-plus cities in India. There's a total of 132, out of which now we have emission inventories for about 80 of those cities. And those 76 city emission inventory study is now available publicly on our website. I'll probably share a link. I should have put that link in. But the question is, what do you do with that emission inventory data? And part of it is that, yes, those are the emissions you need to control. But it's also good to know, because NCAP really focuses on PM2.5 mass concentrations as a target, how much of those emissions contribute to pollution in your city. And so we use chemical transport model. If you attended Sarat's talk yesterday, he talked about various types of air quality models. And so we use CAMX to study the transport of pollution across states and districts in southern India, for example. And basically what you find, so Bangalore is at the center. It is surrounded by a lot of other districts and states. And what you find is that the Bangalore emissions contribute only 40% of our city's PM 2.5. And the rest of it comes from districts nearby, as well as other states, including Tamil Nadu. And so really, and I think this is really varies by season. And so it really calls for a regional framework, at least in southern India and probably other parts of India as well, where we need to work together to reduce our emissions. So this is still preliminary results, so don't hold me to it, but this is the type of work that we can do. And so, Faye presented the results. She talked about the sensor network that she did in West Bengal. So this is still, again, very preliminary results, but we said we have air quality modeling capabilities, and how can we work together? Her sensor network actually yielded some really interesting results that was published as a paper. So we said how to better understand it. We can try to do some air quality modeling around it. So we are happy to, so we ended up developing that, and we are collaborating with Faye on that. So again, sensors leading to new insights and actually leading to new research that can help us better understand air quality in various cities, including Kolkata. So the last couple of slides. One of the things that we do is actually launch policy briefs that actually direct attention towards key problems and solutions. So at COP28 last year, we launched the case for action on black carbon that is with support from the Clean Air Fund and other partners as well. So the idea is that black carbon, which is typically emitted soot that is emitted by diesel vehicles or kerosene lamps or forest fires or brick kilns, they are a super pollutant. They contribute significantly to air pollution. For example, we actually did a mobile monitoring study of air quality in Bangalore, where the on-road PM 2.5 was 86 microgram per meter cube, and the black carbon was 36 microgram per meter cube. So it's a huge contribution. A lot of it you can assume from diesel trucks and diesel buses and diesel cars. But that black carbon also has a significant impact on the climate, especially when it deposits on the Himalayan glaciers or in the Arctic snow and ice, and it leads to more faster melting, and these are critical climate tipping points. So how can we reduce black carbon emissions that improves air quality and avoids these climate tipping points? And we launched that policy brief. We continue to work on various mitigation methods of black carbon. But a key stumbling block on black carbon is actually how we need more measurements of black carbon. And you'll hear from Albert Presto later, I think during ICAS, where his team developed a method to measure black carbon from BAM filter tapes. And so the method is developed. Hopefully, Albert, that's okay. And so he worked with quite a few people. Some of them may actually be in this room to collect their BAM filters and analyze that for black carbon data, so you get hourly black carbon measurements. I had this conversation with my friend Kofi Omega, who's at the back, and talking about Breathe Accra later today, that he wants to get a black carbon monitor, and it's almost as expensive or more expensive than a BAM. And so we're already buying BAMs for monitoring networks. So this is maybe one way to actually not spend more money on a black carbon monitor, but instead get black carbon data anyway. So it's not a low-cost sensor per se, but it's a lower-cost method. And essentially, the idea is how do you reduce the cost of collecting critical air quality data? And so, all of these, Faye, Albert, Dan, are all PI and co-PI of CAMS-Net. So these are all collaborations that we built, including with Allison and Kofi and others. And so the key message that I want you to take away from here is that air sensors and lower cost analytical techniques can effectively complement traditional monitoring. We're not saying they replace regulatory monitors, those are essential, but we can actually fill in data gaps. They can help validate and improve our air quality models. They can yield new insights and inspire new lines of inquiry, like the collaboration we're working on with Faye. And we can develop baselines and track the implementation of policies. Of course, they need standardized evaluation. They need standardized evaluation protocols and Transparency, especially with algorithms. Manufacturers often put algorithms that are hidden or in a black box, so we need more transparency around that. And we will talk a little bit about sensor evaluation results in one of the following sessions. We also need to understand sensor limitations, even post-correction, what can they be used for? What is the useful information that you can get out of it? And really, the key is CAMS-Net is a great platform to develop South-South-North collaborations and learn from each other. So I hope all of you have a good experience here. I welcome you all again to Bangalore and to ICAS and to this CAMS-Net meeting. And look forward to talking with all of you, or most of you anyway, this week. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Subbu. That was excellent, as always. So now we'll move on to our last topic for this session. And it is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Allison Felix Hughes. Dr. Hughes is a senior lecturer at the Department of Physics, University of Ghana. He got his PhD also from the Department of Physics in the University of Ghana, and he also was a special doctoral fellow at the Faculty of Arts and Sciences at Harvard University in the United States. Thank you. He has several international accolades and collaborations that he's here to share with you. Just to highlight one, he is co-leading with Dr. Mike Giordano the AfriCET Center, which is about what you're about to hear about today, which is a really groundbreaking facility in terms of air quality sensing, low-cost sensors, and especially applications for the African continent. So without further ado, Dr. Hughes.
Good morning, and thank you, Dan, for the introduction. It's a privilege to be here this morning to, talk about South-South-North collaborations, and AfriCET is a classic example of this. So I'll tell you a brief story about AfriCET and then how we have come along the way. So we all know the problems associated with, underinvestment in air pollution monitoring and control. And we have this especially in Sub-Saharan Africa, where there's not too much funds to, go into air quality studies or monitoring. And then also data tends to be unreliable because studies are done with just a few monitors, and it also sometimes are not fit for purpose for policymakers. But due to the Internet of Things revolution, I think that there's some hope now in getting local sensors to monitor air pollution. And so our start came from a technical assistance in Ghana, from the World Bank. There were several countries on this technical assistance, and Ghana was just one. We had the World Bank to bring in 2 reference monitors to Accra. And they came at a time we had COVID, and so the vendors and the grantees could not come to Africa to install these monitors, so we had to take charge, had training with my staff and also staff of the Environmental Protection Agency of Ghana to put up these monitors and also a weather station. And so there are 2, one located on the University of Ghana campus, another one in central Accra at the St. Joseph's Catholic School. And so the one in Accra served more as looking at the sources of pollution from the industry, the commercial, and from a major e-waste dumping site. The one at the University of Ghana served as a background, very green and don't have much pollution. And so after we did this, we then had to look at sustainability of the project. And so we had a pilot study from a lot of the people in this room, Dan, Subu, Mike, and the US EPA. We tried to see how we could do a comparison studies with the sensors that were donated by the US EPA, Dan, and then Subu. And so out of this, we had this paper that came out. And this actually was what sprung us into looking at why not put this monitor to use. And so out of this, we have what we call AfriCET. AfriCET is the Air Sensor Evaluation and Training Center for West Africa. It's located in the Department of Physics, University of Ghana. And this is a result of the South-South-North collaboration. And I'll take you quickly through this. So why do we need sensors evaluation center in Africa? You agree with me that a lot have been done in the global north to kind of study how sensors behave, but not much in Africa, where we have different sources of air pollution, different meteorological parameters, and so we thought it wise to approach a funder and see whether we could set up the first evaluation center in the global south. And as usual, we know that local sensors are not plug-and-play devices. We need to understand them and need to calibrate data. Also, we also need to ensure that these sensors, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, is giving us the kind of results that we need. And so AfriCET was set up to evaluate sensors from across the world, also to facilitate capacity building of students and also practitioners, and also to ensure that we can replicate this in other parts of Africa. And so we've done that. We did our SOP, had it validated by those who have started evaluations over the period, Air Paris in France, NALU in Norway, and then also AQ-SPECS. So when we did that and we had our SOP, we knew that we were on the right track because these were trailblazers and they had given us the go-ahead. And so what we decided to do was to evaluate sensors, minimum of 10 sensors in the first year, and come up with our reports and calibration factors. Okay, so we asked manufacturers to send us 3 identical sensor units. Also, we evaluate for 6 weeks in the dry season, which include the Hamilton dust period, which occurred from December, January, February, and then also 6 weeks in the wet period. Sensors comes, we have to do pre-deployment in our lab to ensure that they are all working before taking them out and deploying them at the site. And then afterwards, we look at the data, analyze it, and you hear more about that from Mike later today. So this just shows you some of the sensors that we have at our site and have evaluated. Manufacturers of some of these sensors, we are very grateful to manufacturers who willingly allow the sensors to be evaluated, and we do this free of charge. And so if there's any manufacturer in this room who want to have your sensors evaluated, we are open, see me or Mike after we finish. And so our reference monitor, we have a Teledyne T60 at the site, and that's what we use. We have a couple of gas monitors, which we have not started using yet until we do the calibration. So these are some of the sensors on site. Our website, africet.org, visit it and you see our reports are there. So we have the reports for all, it can be downloaded. The next thing is capacity building. So we've worked on building capacity of stakeholders from across West Africa. This is one of those that took place earlier this year, where we had a collaboration of our major training partner, Columbia University, Professor Westervelt, and we had people from various countries, about 8 countries, doing this training, and the breakdown, you can see that a wide spectrum of people from different professional backgrounds. We've also run training webinars on air quality, and then we have people to come into our labs where we also train. This was just last year when we had the ICAS program in Accra, and I think you see some of the people in this room were there visiting our sites to get an understanding of what we do. Okay, we build capacity, as I said, manufacturers and our staff work together. We heard most of this yesterday, so we get the data, we do the data cleaning, and then look for data recovery. We take a minimum of 75% as a good data to start with. Then we go through looking at the data to look for how they vary with the sensors vary with each other and also with the reference monitor. I think Mike will spend more time on this. We look at how they correlate with the reference monitors. And then also we want to understand, especially during that natural phenomenon called the Hamilton dust period, how these sensors perform. Most of them underestimate during that period where we had a large dust inflow from the Sahara Desert. There's nothing we can do, but we think that manufacturers could maybe start to look at improving the sensors to look for this. Okay. And then we bring our summary statistics. You heard a lot about this yesterday for each of the sensors. We've done some training with some of our collaborators. NALU, I sent my research assistants and associates to NALU, to Air Paris, where we had interactions to understand how they do the work so that we will also continue to do a good work in our evaluation. The next thing is to see how our work will spawn other works in other parts of Africa. We are willing to work to ensure that other parts of Africa also have evaluation centers, since meteorology may differ and also their sources may differ. Just to conclude is that, yes, it's been a long, work getting this set up, especially trying to convince sensor manufacturers to send us the sensors, knowing that we were not known. They know AQ-Specs in California, they know NALU, they know Air Paris. But I think that we've had some very good and successful relationships, and I think some others have already committed to sending us during the next cohort of studies, and we look forward to having the sensors. And what we do is also to do correction factors for these sensors, looking at it from the wet, dry, and the Hamilton period. And these are put on our website. Data are also there freely to download. Manufacturers, we work with them. We share data with them so that together they can be able to, have confidence in the work we do. I want to acknowledge a lot of our partners and also our funder, Clean Air Fund. Special thanks to the list of persons there. Some of them are in this room, and to my colleague Mike, who has been the very good coordinator of this work. Also to our staff, very young men and women back in Accra, Ghana, who are responsible for the success of this work. And I want to thank you for this opportunity. Feel free to just look at our website. We want your response. We want others to also come out, because we need to keep this center going. And so before I leave, I appeal that we are open for more collaborations, and we can talk later Our social media also sites are there. Thank you very much for this opportunity.